week. Let me see. Always takes a couple of seconds. If you're watching this regularly, then you know. But it all seems to be working absolutely perfectly. So there we go. Let's get started. Welcome to the Master Your Exit show, powered by The Big Exit. I am Lynn, and together with Graham here with me will be your host for today. On this Master Your Exit live show, we bring practical insights, we bring expert interviews, interviews with exited business owners, and a bunch of tools to help small business owners like you prepare for your big exit. This live show airs every Tuesday, as today, at 7 a.m. in Los Angeles, 10 a.m. in New York, 3 p.m. in London, and we keep every single show short and simple, about 30 minutes maximum. Now, if you're tuning in live on our YouTube channel or on our LinkedIn company page, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us. And if you're joining us here live in our virtual Zoom studio, that's really awesome too. You know that you can drop in all your exit related questions into the chat function, and we'll be here to answer them live on the show today. And if we don't have the time, we'll do it later on in a next episode. If you're catching this episode later, you can find more episodes of the show on our website, thebigexit.co/master your exit shows with a little dash in between, or you can listen to the audio version on your favorite podcast platform. Now, in today's show, we are going to have a demo. We've been doing demos quite regularly of a couple of the free tools and paid programs that we are offering to our clients who are small business owners looking to sell their business in the next couple of years and want to prepare for that journey to get the maximum value once they bring their small business onto the market. Now, as you know, or maybe not know, but we offer small business owners like yourself a free business evaluation that you can find on our website. And the link, I'll put it in the show notes as well, but the link is thebigexit.co/business dash valuation dash tool. Now, a couple of weeks ago, we already did like a full-on demo of this business valuation tool, guiding you through the questions that are being asked, and your answers are how they are being used to calculate a rough estimate for your business valuation. So we're not going to do that today. I'll put a link to that particular Master Your Exit live show in the show notes as well. But today, Graham and I are going to walk you through some of the results that we have been gathering in terms of business valuations that we have been doing with this free tool of a couple of hundred small business owners who have entered in their data in the business valuation tool. So there's a couple of things that we can say about, people who are using this tool and the businesses that they run. Obviously, we'll be sharing this information anonymously. We're not going to share any specific data on any specific business. That's not what we're here for, and that's not something that we do. But we will share some valuable general insights of the valuations that we have been doing with this free tool over the last, I think, not probably a couple of months, almost a year, I think, that we have been gathering this information. So we'll be sharing that with you today. And in order for us to do that, I'll also do a screen share so we can have a couple of visuals that give some graphical information and support, the conversation that we're going to be having today on this live show. So if you're going to give me a little minute, then I'll do a little screen share. Hold on. There we go. By the way, this is a snapshot of a 90 minutes workshop that we have been doing with our clients, where we do a more of a deeper dive on what makes a business valuable and what makes a business sellable. But this is a short snapshot of that 90 minutes workshop where we'll specifically dive into business valuations and the results that we have been gathering for our clients. Graham, can you see my screen as well?
Got it. Yeah.
Yeah, okay, awesome. That's great. Um, so just a quick recap of the business valuation tool. Um, Important to know. So if you don't really know how much your business is worth as a business owner, you're not alone. About 96% of small business owners isn't exactly sure what their business is worth, and almost all of them overestimate the value of their business. They might base the value of their business on, maybe some random rule of thumb, or they compare it to the price a similar business to theirs has been sold for, or they use their gut feeling based on, how hard they have worked over the last decade building this business, or, their golf buddy at the golf course told them they sold their business for this amount of money. There's all kinds of ways in which small business owners value their business, but most of these ways are not very data driven and are more based on gut feel than anything else. Now, the difference between what you think or believe your business is worth versus what it is actually worth is what we call the value gap. And it's a real thing. It's existing, and most of the time the gap is an unpleasant gap, meaning what you think your business is worth is probably more than what it is actually worth. Now, one thing is very clear: finding out what your business is worth, or finding out that it is worth less than what you think, it's a very rough wake up call. And you might know this already or not, but about 9 out of 10 private businesses fail to sell. About 70% of the deals fall through after an offer has been accepted, and 92% of business owners have businesses that are not exit ready. So, knowing what your business's value is right now is crucial if you're getting on that journey of selling or preparing your business for a sale. So if you want to find out what your business is worth, or at least get like a rough estimate, go on to our website, thebigexit.co// business dash valuation dash tool, and you will get an indicative business valuation range straight away. And the software that we're using is the software that Graham has been developing with his team, and it's based on about roughly 4,500 business exits worth 30 billion of exit value on 6 different continents. So they have a really broad range of valuation data in their business valuation tool. And based upon your data, together with their data, they will give us or you a rough range. Not so much rough, it's a pretty solid range of what your business is worth right now. So feel free to go to on our website, use the free tool, fill out the questionnaires, which is about 10 questions, and then straight away you will receive an email with your business valuation results. If you don't get the email, go check out your spam folder. It might end up there, but literally within less than 10 seconds, you should get your business valuation range into your mailbox. So that's that. But let's talk a little bit on the insights that we have been gathering from our clients' valuations. And I don't know, Graham, if you want to dive straight into some of the data that we have been capturing here.
Yeah, absolutely. So Lynn, I mean, I think the first thing to talk about, this, I guess, reflects the users of the big exit.co evaluations. So this is just a snapshot across the world. So you can see that these are average valuations based in the US, Europe, the Middle East, and even as far afield as Australia. Now, clearly, we see these big differences in value here, but I guess this is more representative of where the concentration is sitting. Here in Australia, there weren't a lot of businesses, as much as we would like more users in Australia. So some of these stats can be a little bit misleading. But based on everyone who's used the platform, through the big exit, we can kind of see average business size. So we can see most of the users of the big exit have got businesses that are valued, between $2 and $3 million. So those are not insignificant numbers, and for most, business owners of, let's call it, freedom type businesses, these are life-changing sums of money. The other thing I want to touch on over here is that the sort of valuations across countries is, there are different elements and dynamics at play. So if you value a business with exactly the same turnover, let's call it, in Poland versus United States, you might get a different answer. There's different economic fundamentals that underpin that. And what this model does in the background is it adjusts for all of those. Okay, so and that's important because geography and where you are can make a fundamental difference to your valuation. So this is just a bit of a snapshot. It gives us a nice kind of feel in terms of different regions and what's coming out of the platform, but not particularly insightful, I guess, in and of itself. Okay, so maybe we want to move on to the next slide, because I think this starts to go into some of the sort of
A
more
little bit more
nuanced.
into the nitty-gritty details, indeed. Exactly. So let's move
Correct.
into the next slide here. And
Yeah.
Graham, if you want to go for that one. I'm not really
Yeah.
sure if I'm putting our faces on the screen or not, but let me
Yeah.
just move that a little bit to the side.
I think we're on the right hand side, but I think the other thing I want to touch on here is that these valuations are not, it's everybody who's used the Master Exit valuation tool and the big exit valuation tool. It's not only businesses that have sold. Okay, this is everybody who's come and said, "Hey, I'm interested in finding out what my business is worth," and that's an important distinction because, as you said earlier, roughly 10% of all businesses that go to market actually sell. So we're actually getting a bigger population set of businesses that haven't even necessarily sold that are coming through here. So
Just to
what
add
we've
to
done
that,
here,
Graham, as well, just to give a little bit of nuance here too, we ask people, when they complete the business valuation tool, why they are doing a business valuation tool. And the biggest chunk of them is because they are looking to sell their business in the next couple of years. And then there's also a smaller chunk of people who are like, I'm just really curious to find out what my business is worth. I'm not really thinking about selling yet, but I kind of like want to have a feel for it. So at least I know kind of roughly what to expect. So no matter what your reason is for taking a business valuation test like the one that we have on our website, it's a valid reason. And the main goal is to at least give you, like a ballpark number, like a yearly KPI that gives you an indication of what your business is worth. And as Graham was saying, very rightfully, that doesn't mean you'll be selling your business for that amount. It could be more, it could be less, but at least it's that benchmark value that at least you know what it's worth more or less. So just to give a little bit of more nuance to that. Sorry to have interrupted you, Graham.
absolutely. So I think this next slide talks about average valuations by sector. And again, we're looking at the big exit data set. And we've broken it down into about 20 different sectors here. So I want to draw out a couple. You'll see a couple of very big bars on the left-hand side there. So financial services, fintech, food production and processing, and media. And there's some fairly substantial businesses over here, 5, 6, $7 million businesses. Now, I do want to add caution to this. It doesn't mean that just because you have a food production or media or financial services business that it's going to be worth a huge amount more. Some of this is around who's actually used the platform. Now, the vast majority of, I guess, customers or users of the big exit are professional services firms, and you'll see those ones highlighted in yellow, and a lot of service industries who actually come and use the platform. The two or the three big ones are more a function of a few big customers have used this and not necessarily representative of that being the norm from an industry point of view. Having said that, though, fintech, financial services businesses that have got scale and that are already profitable are usually quite valuable. Okay. And one of the key drivers in terms of how we understand valuation is how much cash profit are you making. One of the limitations of the tool that we've provided is that you already have to be making cash profits. So if you're a business that's sort of pre-revenue or you're not yet making profits, unfortunately, this free tool is not going to be able to deal with that complexity. So it's dealing with businesses that have already made profit. And a business like a financial
And just
services
just
fin.
to add to that, Graham, if I may, because you're touching upon a very interesting thing that I think I want to highlight a little bit more without kind of like brushing over it. Because when we're
Mm,
talking about business valuations, specifically if you're not familiar with that and you might be like reading the articles on media platforms around this founder has exited for 150 million dollars, this founder has exited for like 1.5 billion dollars, and all these stories. I mean, they're really great for media because you'll click on them, and that's what the media outlets love. For a lot of these businesses, first and foremost, they are often venture capital backed businesses who have raised capital in multiple rounds, pre-seed, seed, A, B, C, D, whatever the rounds have been. And that might also mean that those founders who have exited for those significant numbers probably also have a smaller portion, if not only maybe just 5 or 10% in ownership for those businesses. And they make the
yeah,
exception to the rule. All our clients are, none of them are VC backed. All of them are, most of them are bootstrapped, which basically
yeah,
means the owners have been building up this business and kind of reinvested profits into the business to make it grow. And almost all of them are, if not 100% shareholders, they have majority shareholdership of their
mm,
businesses. In general, the exit numbers in which those businesses sell, because they are a little bit smaller, aren't as big as maybe the things that you read in the media outlets. Yet it makes a lot of difference if you're owning 100% of a company versus 5% of a company. Now, bear in mind, and just to revert back what Graham was saying, is this business valuation tool is not meant for VC-backed businesses that are pre-profit, who have valuations sometimes of 5 million or 10 million or 20 million without even making a profit or anything like that. So this tool is
yeah.
not the best tool for those kinds of businesses. But if you have been around for a while with your business, you're making a profit, you're mostly bootstrapped, this is a great tool to be using. So yeah, that's what I wanted to add to that conversation, Graham.
Absolutely. And yeah, just to touch on those kind of big outliers, a fintech business that is profitable and is bootstrapped and that is usually got a bit of scale. So there's some, substantial exits in here for those owners. And then I want to highlight, as I say, the bulk, I guess, of the users of the big exit probably sit in financial services or professional services, let's call it that, or non-IT services industries. So a lot of freelancers, a lot of those kind of businesses. And you can see there, you know, those two call outs, one in the sort of $600,000 range and the other in the services industry, non-IT. We're looking at an average exit value of about 1.8 million. I think the big difference between these two is the professional services ranges are usually, when we drill deeper into the data, are usually people who are doing a lot of the work themselves. Okay, so a professional lawyer or an accountant or something who's got a small practice. Think of an accounting practice for argument's sake. And the services industry, non-IT, are sometimes a little bit more scalable. And you can see that coming through in the valuation differences here. But for these individuals, exiting with a lump sum of $500,000 or $1.8 million is life-changing. So I wanted to just pull that out. You can see some of the other industries that are traditionally regarded as tougher industries, property development and construction. Think of somebody who, let's call it a hobby builder for argument's sake. Those are typically industries that have got very thin margins. They're not easy to make a lot of money out of. You can feed your family and build something. But if you're building houses as a hobby, okay, not as a hobby, as a business, you can see it's not necessarily a big exit multiple. The same with tourism businesses. It's dependent. You're often constrained by, your time and your energy and how scalable that is. So I just wanted to have those two as call outs in terms of where some of that value sits and lies. I think, Lynn, maybe we can move on to the next slide.
Yep. And that's the last slide that we have, and we talk a little bit about multiples on this one. Now, before diving into a lot of details of the multiples and whatever, which is not the place to do right now, but let's just talk a little bit about it. So just to give people a feel.
Correct. So the reason we show it as a multiple, this is a multiple of profit. And I'm the first to caution against using multiples. A multiples is a sense check, but it is a fairly easy way. And we talk about multiples here. We're talking about multiples of EBITDA. In the context of these kind of businesses, EBITDA is where there's very little debt on the balance sheet, often not necessarily asset-heavy businesses. EBITDA and cash profit before tax, okay, is often the same thing. Okay, so I'm just using that as a reference point. It is a useful way to get a sense of how scalable a business is, how risky it is, how quickly it's growing, all of those sorts of things. So it's a sense check. We don't read too much into it, but it is a useful way to say which are those sectors where you can possibly get a disproportionate exit, okay, or exit multiple. And like we saw on the previous slide, where the big valuation was fintech services, I think media, these are businesses which are very scalable and can often grow quite quickly because you've got lots of end users, consumers. Okay. But equally, they can be very risky as well. Okay. So you tend on the upside to see those businesses that do well can do really well because you can penetrate those customer bases and do other things with them. Okay. So often an acquirer is paying for that potential. And often they're quite scalable. So you can see on the up end there on financial services, almost a 9 times multiple on EBITDA, but on the lower end, you're sitting at sort of a 6 times. So this is reflective of what we see in the market. I think the other thing here is you see there's always a range. So, when somebody says the average for a sector is 4.8, okay. If you just take professional services, there's a very big difference between a business doing 5.8 at the top end versus one doing 3.9 at the lower end. Okay. And that range is based on, how owner dependent it is. How quickly is it growing? How much customer concentration and that do you have in your business? Now, again, this sample or this data set looks at businesses that are already making a profit. Okay. And that's one of the input things in the model. If you're not making a profit, you're not going to be in this data set. It's going to come through as a 0. Okay. But that is an important takeout. And I think, again, when people talk about, hey, I'm selling my business and I'm getting 10 times revenue as a multiple or 20 times EBITDA, those are just often pie in the sky numbers when it comes to small businesses like this. 3 to 4 times is a much more reasonable expectation if your business is sale ready and you've done all of those good things. If it's not, it's almost binary. You're going to get very little. You're going to get 0, or you're going to maybe get 1 times earnings. Okay. And that's why I think sometimes you see a little bit of this gap. So yeah, I mean, I think that's a takeout. Again, I'll call out the one on the right there, tourism businesses, at like 2 times earnings. Again, it's because, post-COVID and that tourism took a big hit. Okay. And it realized those businesses are very sensitive to global affairs and travel and also how you can scale those businesses. So by all means, if being a tour guide is your passion, go and do that. Okay. But again, don't generally expect to get a massive multiple when you're selling your business. So Lynn, I don't know if you want to add anything, but I think, it's just the data really is instructive. And I think with the big exit, over time, we're getting more and more data. This picture can change. It can change over time. It can change in sentiment. It can change, based on what's happening geopolitically. But I think it is a useful sense check for any business owner to come and see where do they map up against these things. And I think what we hope to do in the future is actually benchmark your valuation against some of these guys. So you can see where, this is a product development that we're busy working on. So you can see, where do you fit in that range? Are you on the lower end? You're on the higher end. Okay. If you're on the higher end, then you're doing well. If you're on the lower end, then you've probably got some work to do to improve your business.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Yeah, I think two things that I want to add, or just kind of like to wrap things up and wrap this conversation up. I mean, there's two things that are out of your control mostly as a business owner. One is the industry that you are in. I mean, you're in it or you're not in it, right? I mean, this is just the industry that you're in is not something that you pick besides when you founded your business. So multiples are decided partially on the sector that you are in. That's one thing. The second thing is multiples also really depend on, what the market is doing for your particular industry. We have come from a period, and we're still in a period where media businesses and attention-based businesses are valued quite highly because attention from people is becoming more and more expensive because the online space is more and more crowded and everybody is yelling for the attention of clients, whether those are B2C or B2B clients. Hence, media businesses who have that attention from a really big crowd are being valued high and higher, and I think probably will be valued higher and higher for the next, couple of years to come. Other businesses, I think, in industries, where AI and the development in AI is kind of, distorting those kinds of businesses or disrupting those kinds of industries, might see their multiples dropping over the next couple of years. These are things like they are what they are. You are in the market that you're in and the industry that you're in. So there's not that much that you can do besides maybe waiting or seeking the moment or seizing the moment, I think is the right way to say it. There's that part. And then the second part is there's a variation in those multiples, even within a market and within an industry, as you can see on this slide as well. And that variation between, does your business get a multiple of 4 versus 6? I mean, we're talking life-changing money here. That makes the difference between probably a couple of $100,000 being not wired to your bank account as a business owner at the end of the line, or when the deal is done. And that variation in that multiple, that is something that you can manage and control as a business owner. The more sellable and ready to sell your business is, the higher the multiple will be within that range of, the market and the industry that you're in. So there's things you can't control, and then there are things that you can control. And those things are significant when it comes down to, increasing that multiple for your industry that you are in. So that was one of the things that I kind of like wanted to add to this conversation. Now, before we wrap things up, is there anything you want to add to that, Graham?
I think that's pretty much it. At the end of the day, we just wanted to highlight some of the stats, and I think it is important. Benchmarking is a useful way just to see where you stand. It doesn't mean it's the silver bullet. And I think that's the most important thing. And I think for most of the people listening, it's around grounding your expectations. So I think that's really important. And educate yourself, go deeper. As part of the Big Exit program, there are more, let's call it valuation service, which goes into that next level and actually unpacks it a little bit further. So if you're curious and you think, sure, I'm on the low end, like what can I do to make that bigger? Then think about signing up for the program and exploring those options. I think that's the important thing. You can do something about it. And taking action to improve your situation is probably the best thing that you can do.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for kind of like wrapping this up. So I would suggest this is a wrap for this week's episode of the Master Your Exit show. Thank you so much for joining us today. I hope you're leaving with some valuable insights to help you prepare for your big exit. And remember, you can catch the replay of this episode and all of the other episodes on our website, thebigexit.co/master your exit shows, with a little dash in between every single word. Or you can listen to the audio version on your favorite podcast platform. Now, we also love to hear from you. You can send in your exit-related questions via our website, and then we'll answer them in next week's show. Just head to the website, Master Your Exit sign up. And you can sign up there for next week's show and send in your exit questions as well. And then we can answer them in this next week's show or any of the other future episodes that we have scheduled. So we'll be back next Tuesday at 7 a.m. in Los Angeles, 10 a.m. in New York, or 3 p.m. in London with more tips, expert interviews, and tools to master your exit. Until then, keep building, keep preparing, and we'll see you next week. Thank you so much.